Police have read it. What call turned serious very quickly. Deputy here. It was a Saturday night and I had a call for an erratic vehicle. Everyone assumed it was a routine DWI because it was Saturday night and started looking. Well, she passed me on a main road, so I turned around and conducted a traffic stop. She stopped her car in a terrible place, so I approached on the passenger side. She was very angry and disrespectful and she wouldn't turn to look at me, just looked forward. I could smell alcohol, wasn't sure if it was coming from her or the vehicle. I asked for her license and registration to run her information. I decided I was going to talk to her more on the driver's side to see if I could find signs of impairment. When I walked over to her side, I saw the entire left side of her face was bruised and blood was coming out of her mouth. Also a bruise on her neck in the shape of a hand and fingers. I had her step out to ask about it. She informed me her boyfriend got drunk and thought she was cheating on him and decided to hold her down by the neck and punch her approximately 10 times. She had major swelling and the blood was a cut from her cheek against her teeth. It took 25 minutes to convince her to give me his information. She told me he lives in a neighboring state and the incident occurred there. I called the neighboring state police and informed the monsieur. Found out the guy had 3 felony warrants and they have been looking for hi monsieur. Edit. Thanks for the gold. So was she just driving to get away from him? Or trying to get to the hospital? She was heading home. About an hour and a half drive for her. She didn't want to go to a hospital and RMA when them showed up. Sheriff deputy here. During patrol I started noticing at one house that their packages being delivered at their front door weren't being taken inside. A lot of these packages were groceries. I also noticed their mail wasn't being brought in. Usually the postal service mentions something when they see this, but I brought it upon myself to do a welfare check. I arrived at the door and knocked. No answer. I knocked a few more times. No answer. I started thinking maybe the person registered to live there may be gone for a while. I decided to take one peek through the front window and I saw an elderly woman laying on the ground. I announced to dispatch what I saw and I'm entering the house immediately. Luckily, I didn't have to kick the front door down and instead discovered the back door was unlocked. I entered the house and the lady was alive, but due to her older age, she wasn't able to stand back up on her own strength after falling and has been laying on the ground for 2 days. I got paramedics to arrive and take her to a nearby hospital. I found her phone book with personal numbers in her kitchen and called her adult children and notified them of what happened. They were very relieved and drove to the hospital to help care for her. How you told her about the panic button old PPL can get and hang around their necks. She has some dementia going on, so she would have never remembered to wear it on her own, let alone use it even if she was wearing it. It was dumb and routine before we got there. It was a local, well-known, drunken criminal who was playing with fireworks. Not an uncommon thing. However, he was in his living room monsieur, and they were very powerful and illegal. He was entertaining himself by lighting the wick and putting it out. He wasn't quick enough one time. A mortar went through his roof, blasted the storm door off the hinges into the front yard. His torso lacerated. Intestines needed to be pushed back in and sewn up. About a year later he got in a fight with his girlfriend on the interstate highway. At some point they pulled over. He got out, doors were locked, so he climbed on the hood. She started driving and he fell off. Wasn't even in very bad shape. He was shirtless, of course, and I saw the surgery scars from the year prior. Natural selection is working hard on this one. With some people, it seems like even death doesn't want the monsieur. Not a cop. This happened outside my college residence and I imagine they had a laugh at this before they showed up because my roommates and I sure did. This kid was all messed up on some kind of drug and was screaming and beating the asterisk out of her backhoe loader that had been left there overnight due to some construction work going on campus. Obviously construction equipment is generally made out of pretty thick steel, so it's not like he was doing much damage. By this point campus security had been by and I'm assuming were like this we need the real police because they just stopped for 10 minutes and then kept driving. I'm assuming this is the point where the police were called. Turns out some dumbass left the keys in the machine. You know, cause that's what you do on a college campus full of drunk teenagers. So this kid somehow figures out how to start it and proceeds to drive straight forward into the backup generator for the residence building across from mine, knocking it off its concrete pad and crushing it up against the wall. Then tried to back up, but the cops have arrived at this point and blocked his escape. He then tries to drive over the lawn to get away, but since he can't figure out how to raise the bucket up, he can't get over the curb and ends up bending the asterisk out of the bucket by hitting the concrete repeatedly. Obviously was arrested on the spot. Actually, with heavy equipment it is common practice to just leave the keys in. Yep, key under the seat at pretty much every farm I've worked on. Also, most heavy machinery have more or less the same kind of key as well. Old job I worked at, we used a grinded down screwdriver to start most of the equipment. Not a cop, but the son of one. Lots of stories I could tell, but one has always stood out in particular. Police were called one night due to noise complaint at someone's house. When police arrive, it's discovered that there is meth and the person in the house is on it like no tomorrow. More cops eventually show up and none of them can keep Jerry down. They try using a taser, but it's ineffective on its own, as taser is getting a new battery. 8 cops tackle Jerry all at once and are still struggling to keep him down. Dude with taser then shoves taser against Jerry's balls and says, "Put your hands behind your back, or your balls are getting electrocuted." Jerry then magically complies with police officers. I guarantee his balls wouldn't have ever gotten a shock. As teens we were playing with a taser and one kid shocked himself in the balls. He was still hurting from it 3 days later. I got the opposite response here. Got a call that a woman was giving birth, so me and a rookie head on over to the address. Rookie was super excited to get to help with this since he hadn't gotten the opportunity yet. So we pull up and his face drops. It's a 50-year-old meth-ed up woman rolling and screaming in her grass saying that she's giving birth to a dog. Anyways, I tell my partner to fuck on out of here and go help the woman deliver that dog. That call went from serious to pretty dumb very quickly. Username checks out. Not a cop. Paramedic here. The police and I were called to a public intoxication. No idea why medics were called, but anyway. The guy was hammered and had been stranded by his drinking buddies because he didn't want to get into the car. He was on the phone when I got there and he handed it to me and said, "I can't talk to her." So I took the phone from him and I hung it up and handed it back. Turns out he wanted me to talk to her for him. He went ballistic and threw a punch at me, and as he was punching the cop put a boot in his back. The guy ended up smashing his face on the road and suffered a concussion plus some other stuff. This was years ago and I still remember because I felt so guilty at the time. Oh god, call a paramedic. Different one that I haven't punched. Not me, but my dad, who was a cop and is still a firefighter, had one that I still laugh at. He was working a shift on the police department back in the early to mid-80s and got a call late one night for smoke showing from a residence. His assistant chief shows up first. I should preface by saying he was a fat and lazy asterisk and didn't properly check and radioed dispatch that there wasn't smoke showing and to disregard the fire department. My dad shows up and his AC tells him that it was a false alarm and my said he was going to check. Anyway, he said he smelled smoke as he got out of his cruiser and said he was going to check for himself. He opens the backyard fence and down the small hill to the back. As he walked to the back of the house he saw smoke pouring out of the soffits and saw flames in the back windows. He radios dispatch to have the fire department remain en route, and that smoke and flames visible, and then asks for mutual aid from a neighboring department. Fire department shows up and was able to knock down the fire before it got too out of hand, besides some serious smoke damage, but the house was eventually refinished and still stands to this day. I hope that AC got called out for that. Not a police officer, but have a story. Once my dad was dating this woman who had a teenage son. The kid did not like my dad at all. One day, dad and his girlfriend got into a fight and my dad slept in the garage. He woke up to her son and 2 of his friends holding baseball bats around. Hi monsieur. The kids beat up my dad and ran off. My dad called the police to report the incident, but when the cops realized who my dad was, they arrested my dad on the spot for not paying child support to my monsieur. TLDR, my dad called the cops on his girlfriend's son, ended up getting arrested. What happened to the child? Not sure. My dad stopped talking to the woman after that. I assume the cops took the kids overnight, but we will never know for sure, I guess. Not a cop, but this is a story from my criminal justice professor from college. There was this house she and her partner had to visit frequently for domestic disputes between a grown son and his wheelchair-bound father. It was never that bad, mostly just yelling, and the neighbors would call the police to check on the monsieur. No charges were ever pressed, so they'd usually just check in and be on their way. They got another one of those calls one day thinking it'd be the same as usual. This time the son is waiting outside for the monsieur. The partner is still questioning the son, and thinking the old man wasn't gonna be a threat, she goes inside to deal with him on her own. She announced herself and approached him to talk. He doesn't say anything but suddenly grabs for her gun. She pinned the gun in his hands to her side and tried punching him, pepper spraying, anything she could think of to get to him to let go. Eventually her partner heard her screaming and ran in to disarm him, and he was taken away. He later admitted he was gonna shoot her and then his son, and she was pretty shaken up after that. Obligatory not cop but friend of a guy whose dad is a cop. It was actually the reverse. It started seriously but ended hilariously. He went to go bust some drug ring. Who knows what he was going to find. Instead, he found a homeless dude with a syringe. He said, "You shouldn't inject yourself with syringes off the ground. You could get a disease." To which the homeless dude responded, "You see, to me, diseases are like Pokemon. Gotta catch 'em all." That got a snort out of me. Not a police officer, but something I witnessed and may or may not have had something to do with it. Me and my friends were just chilling at my house playing Call of Duty and Halo. This was 2010. I have very noisy neighbors. Well, we thought we would play a prank on them by calling the cops on them and hope that might shut them up. Well, when we did, we said that we think they have been using and selling drugs. When the cops arrived like 30 minutes later, they busted down the door. We heard gunfire. This soon turned into a gunfight. My neighbor was apparently running his own drug cartel. They had to call backup and everything. I wonder what would have happened if me and my friends had not called the cops.